Okay, folks, can I welcome you all to the Welfare Reform Subcommittee of the 4th of June. Can I remind you that the meeting's being recorded and therefore will be subsequently made available for the public to listen to. Can I ask if there's any apologies for that?
No apologies this morning. Chairman, 6 members currently present. Councillor McGregor, not present.
Okay, thanks very much. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you. Can we turn to item number 3, which is the minute of the meeting of the 10th of February 2015. Can I ask if members are happy to approve the minute as a true record? Yeah. Okay, everybody happy? Okay. Okay, folks, a relatively light agenda today, but still important reports on our monitoring. The first one is item number 5, which is the report on the Scottish Welfare Fund and Discretionary Housing Benefit Update. Oh, sorry, item 4. Sorry, another set of minutes. Yeah, I thought it was a long time ago, since February. Okay, can we turn to item 4? My apologies. The minute of the meeting on the 9th of April. Happy it's a true record of the meeting. Of the 4 people there, myself, Rob, Jane. Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. Okay. Try again. Item number 5. Can I ask if there's anything to add to the report, Lorna?
Thanks, Chair. No, nothing further to add.
Okay. Can I open it up to members for any questions? Ian?
Took the statistics as given on here, but when I was reading 3.3, one of the questions that popped into my mind, this is one about working practices, and I was wondering what value does this add? What can this working practice to the actual policy outcomes? How does it add value? And I'll put that into context. I thought there's two sides to it, because officers are being asked, I'd actually say not being asked, they continue to provide support to the applicants who are unsuccessful, which I think is only about fair, because it could have been a poor application, you could say. But at the same time, it goes on there and says that if they've had more than one application, they get a visit. So I think it's almost like a stop, check, balance, so it's keeping things in order. I thought that was what it was aiming at, which I thought was quite good. But just to get an understanding on that, is that the case? If no, what's the objectives, or how does it affect our performance in regards to that?
Yes, that's what we're currently doing. For unsuccessful applications, certainly go and look to see, well, why it was unsuccessful. Is there any other underlying reasons there? Is there other support we could provide there from other areas? I mean, obviously there's a variety of reasons why someone may be unsuccessful, may not meet the criteria of the scheme, so that's where we look for other avenues. Or it may be a poorly completed application, so that it may be that there's a reapplication submitted and which may be successful after that visit. For those who have had more than one application in the scheme, again, it's similar. It's looking at underlying reasons. You know, why is there repeated applications? Is there something more that we could be doing, either from our service or referrals to other support agencies? So that's what we're currently doing. We're currently gathering statistics to have a look at what kind of positive outcomes we're getting from these visits and whether it's, you know, a value to claimants and you know what it's actually providing. So we're working on that and gathering that at some point. We'll bring that back to committee as well to look at what the actual outcomes have come from the work of these officers, and that'll either be the next committee or the following one.
Okay, Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. It's in relation to paragraph 3.2, sir, the statement, the trend in reduced applications received has continued into the new financial year. Any particular reason for that, or anything we can hang a hat on?
The reduced applications are specifically around community care grants, and we've seen that reduction start after we introduced the goods fulfilment option. It was a market, and that has continued. And I think what we said at the time with the goods fulfilment, there were some speculative claims that came in there, and that certainly seems to have reduced that completely. Because the fulfilment of goods, we're getting positive feedback from both claimants and from the services providing who are actually installing the goods and delivering the goods. So while that may not be the only reason, obviously there's better understanding of the scheme out there as well. So we've got less claims where we're refusing because our success rate of positive outcomes applications is increasing despite the fact that claims are reducing. So it would suggest there's a better understanding of the scheme as well.
Thanks, Chair. Much appreciated.
Okay. Any other members? Jane?
Yes, it's the same paragraph, and talking about the level of awards. What's the benchmark to this, to what the level is, if you see what I mean? Is it to do with availability? Because it seemed to me that some time ago we were more careful because you had to look and see what the resources were. So of course you're more careful. But if I could have an idea about what the benchmark is for levels of rewards and whether or not that will then have to change with respect to what might come forward in the next couple of years.
Do you mean benchmark locally or at a national level?
How do you decide what you give?
Right. Yes, within the scope of the scheme, there's priority levels. The actual guidance for Scottish Welfare Fund details out high level, medium level and low level awards that you can follow. At the moment, we are given medium level awards. We dropped initially, it was only high level because we were unsure of what the demand for the scheme was. Because we have sufficient funds, we've dropped that down to medium level. Again, talking to the team, most of the awards that they refuse these days are really because people don't meet the criteria of the scheme completely. So there's not that many, I would say, classes low-level awards that don't actually get an award of some sort through both schemes.
Yeah. Just a broad question in regards to the Smith Commission, the outcomes for that, and what can potentially be coming. How do you think, just curious more than anything, whether it can be difficult to answer, to say the least, but obviously we're looking at, UK government's looking at remitting more powers to Scottish government are looking at taking on board and possibly removing, particularly the size criteria, and we see the pressure that's on there. How would that look? I mean, have you any idea what that's going to look like in the future in regards to what we're undertaking at the moment, potentially? Difficult if you want to answer it, fair enough. I'm just curious. It's the magic wand scenario, isn't it?
Where do we start? No. I mean, there's been a lot, specifically around the size criteria. There is quite a bit of discussion at the moment, certainly with the professional bodies, about how that would look in a devolved government, whether that should be something that would still remain administered by DWP, but potentially with size criteria not being part of it, and if DWP systems could cope with that, and then the funding of paying DWP to do that just for Scotland. If you take it out of universal credit and it's delivered by local authorities, the whole administration on costs around that. So I think there's quite a bit of work in about how will that work, how will that be costed, because part of the Smith Commission is, yes, it's a devolved power, but the Scottish Government has to pay for it. So, you know, that will need to be resolved and how we do it. But I think at the moment, certainly for the professional bodies that, you know, I'm talking to and other professionals, we're still very unsure at how that is going to look. But how devolved will that be? And you know, yeah.
Ronnie?
Just following on from that, I mean, if you look at the size criteria, which is clearly the biggest financial hit, clearly the people that qualify for that are living in a house that's got an extra bedroom, for argument's sake, well, factually. If there's a cut in that budget, which is predicted, is the social landlords, you know, thinking about this? I mean, if we can't give the people the money to stay in their home and they can't afford to pay it, they're going to get put out. And I just see a whole lot of trouble coming up there. I'm just wondering, as a council, we're working with our partner organisations to look at this, not just in monetary terms, but if it is cut, then what do we do with the people that might get in arrears or lose their homes?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll maybe try and respond to that. It's a huge dilemma for the RSLs locally, because one of the big challenges that we've got in terms of the overall housing stock is that there is an insufficient number of one-bedroom properties. So it's not directly within the RSL's control to say if it comes to it, we'll be able to accommodate all the size criteria affected households because we've got sufficient one-bedroom properties to offer them alternative accommodation. So we're not there, so we haven't got that flexibility. One of the things that the Housing Subcommittee agreed through the Strategic Housing Investment Plan was to increase the provision of one-bedroom units through the new build programme. But obviously that takes years to develop and implement, so that's kind of 3 or 4 years down the line before we'll see that making any kind of impact. The other element to it is to look at the Common Housing Register and how the Common Allocations Policy deals with this issue, and to see if we can incentivise in some way people moving into smaller properties if they're available. But the bottom line is that the stock, to a large extent, is not there. So we need to either develop more or remodel or look at other solutions. One of the things DGHP have been looking at, although they've not reached any conclusions on it, is the potential to convert larger properties to smaller properties. But that's a huge amount of money, capital. There's also issues around whether that would meet the housing quality standard. So again, that comes with a whole raft of difficulties. So there's a range of things that are being looked at, but there is no simple or straightforward answer to any of them, but they are under constant review.
Thanks for that, John, and probably guessed the answer, but it just strikes me that if we're, and just taking on what the question that Ian asked about devolved power, if you look at Dumfries and Galloway, and it's what, almost £1 million there, and there's 32 local authorities all doing a similar thing. If the powers were transferred, that's an awful lot of money any government's got to find, or local authorities. It's just a huge problem, and that's only one, that's only the bedroom, the size criteria. It frightens me personally.
Just in terms of how properties are allocated at the moment, obviously the big challenge is that people who are already in properties where they've got classed as having one extra bedroom, that's debatable in some cases, but anyway, that's what they're classed as under the legislation. But what about when people are now being allocated properties? Are people being allocated properties that effectively puts them into the bedroom tax?
The current policy does not prohibit people who would be entitled to a one-bedroom property except in a larger property if that's available. Quite often, if we've got pockets of low demand and there's maybe a two-bedroom flat available, it's with what we're trying to describe it as informed consent. So the applicant knows that there is a potential for the social size criteria to apply in the future. What's currently happening is that DHP is funding that. So there's no direct, immediate financial cost, but the tenancies are offered by the RSLs, ensuring that those households know that potentially that could change in the future. But realistically, what's the choice? If they're sitting waiting for a one-bedroom property and that's not going to be available for some time, and they're offered a larger property, then they are more likely to accept that, knowing that it's potentially a financial risk down the line, but it's meeting their immediate needs, and that's the kind of bind that we're all in at the minute.
Alistair and then Jane.
Well, as I've said before, sir, I mean, I worry about the thought of us building, sort of massive numbers of one-bed properties, because quite frankly, they are not popular with applicants, and they do not allow RSLs or local authorities to make the maximum use of their housing stock. Far and away, the best bet, Chair, at the very least, is two-bedroom properties, and it gives you the maximum amount of flexibility. And that, as I say, is a very real worry and a very real concern for me, born of, a fair old number of years' experience. So it seems that we're in a situation which there is no clear way out of.
I presume if we get a seminar, we can pick away at all these sorts of issues, and really, but actually, I mean, certainly, I would like to know what the structure is of the extra bedroom requirement. How many people are in twos wanting to go to ones? How many people are in threes wanting to go to twos? I mean, I think that would be helpful to have some idea of. I don't know whether that's actually known, but I think there is an issue. I absolutely agree with Councillor Geddes. I've always thought that it's a real, I think it just constrains people's ability to have people to look after them. If there's, in a two-bedroom flat, if you go into one, I think it's a mistake. But for us to know as a council whether or not we, with our partners, want to support that going forward, we need to know what the risks are and what we are going to have to do. And of course, there's also the private sector, because they are not supported. And I think we need to be completely clear about that.
Thanks, Jay. Yes, certainly in terms of the members' seminar as kind of contextual information, we can certainly provide level of demand information from the Common Housing Register about the number of applicants who are currently under-occupying, looking for smaller properties, and potentially the number on the waiting list who are currently not on a property waiting for one bed. So we can get that information from members to see, so you can kind of scale the size of the problem.
I think it's fair to say that the seminar will obviously focus on the other bits other than the bedroom tax, so to speak, because obviously we have to pay, rightly so, DHP to cover the bedroom tax. The challenge will then be those people that are not affected by the bedroom tax, to what extent we can continue to support people that apply for other reasons to the level we've been supporting them at the moment. Gail?
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for lateness. I think probably last year, maybe even before, other local authorities were looking at practices that they would try and do within their authority, and I think one of them was younger people sharing. Have we looked at what other local authorities are doing to sort of overcome this? And as I say, I'm sure it was Fife or something that was looking at young people sharing property rather than them having it, as a property in their own right, which I think is reasonable, because it happens with young working professionals. I don't see that it should be any different with people just because they're in a slightly more hardship situation. The other issue we have is that we do have properties in Dumfries and Galloway, and I'll cite Ecclefechan as an example, where we simply can't get people to take those properties, and it makes me wonder, how many chances do they get, how many choices do they get before they actually do decide where they want to live? Because certainly we have 2 units in Ecclefechan that they can't get people in it for love nor money. Genuine homeless people who will not take these properties, and I think that's a concern. And maybe through the seminar we need to look at our housing stock, or the area's housing stock, the pinch points, and try and improve some of those in conjunction with DGHP and such like.
But the seminar is that we're kind of straying. I know that John's got several hats, one of which is obviously housing, but we're kind of straying a wee bit into housing, but it does.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. In terms of the shared tenancies issue, I know it's something that Lawburn were looking at particularly, but I don't think they reached any specific conclusions about a scheme that they could implement. It's obviously fraught with difficulties in terms of kind of matching households who'd be prepared to share. And it's a slightly different setup, obviously, from the private sector, but it is something that's been looked at, but there's been no firm conclusions reached on that. Just for clarification, in terms of number of offers, homeless applicants just receive 1 offer of accommodation, and if it's considered to be a reasonable offer that they refuse, then the council's statutory responsibility finishes. So that's the current position. But certainly we can provide this as background information for the seminar, but as Councillor Smith says, the seminar is focused primarily on the issues around the DHP, but it's important to set the context and the environment in which it's being operated.
Thanks, Chair. Presumably in certain circumstances, on the back of shared tenancy arrangements, houses in question would require to be registered as, could require to be registered as houses in multiple occupation. Would that be the case? Depending on circumstances.
If it's more than 2 unrelated individuals, then it would classify as an HMO. If it's 2 or less, then it wouldn't be.
Thinking, Chair, for instance, of a 3-bedroom house with 3 different unrelated young people or people of any age in it, that would be, technically would be an HMO.
Yeah, potentially that would be.
It's quite clear from the report that the funding that we have available is going to run out based on the current criteria unless additional funding from elsewhere is identified. So that's the aim of the seminar, to look at the options. And it's clear that we'll need to make a decision on the criteria at our next meeting in the 27th of August, I think it is. So the seminar clearly needs to take place between now and the 27th of August, and it also needs to take place, I suppose, in a way that allows members to have the maximum input so that the options that come before us are the ones that members are looking for from the seminar. So can I ask members when they wish that seminar to go ahead? I think we've got a full house here today in terms of all the members of the committee. Obviously, seminar will be open up to all councillors, but ultimately this committee will make the decisions. I think it's important that members are in attendance, but I'm conscious that the recess starts in the middle of July and goes right through to the middle of August. So I'm keen to know where members wish to see this seminar to go, because obviously time's not on our side. Alistair?
Just an issue, Chair, you know, presumably it's the fact that it's a seminar. You know, I think there may very well be in the back of the discussion and the presentations that take place a desire for those present, you know, to take some decisions, which technically as a seminar we simply can't do. Is there any other way of maybe sort of making it a decision-making vehicle and having it as soon as possible?
Well, we will make a decision as a committee on the 27th of August, so there'll be plenty of opportunity. As a committee, we agreed effectively to continue the current criteria till September. So by having the next meeting of the subcommittee on the 27th of August, we've got the opportunity to make the decision then. The issue is to make sure that that decision is informed. We don't want to get to the situation 27th of August where we think, actually, we need more information, because actually we won't have that breathing space at that point. We want to make a decision on the 27th of August. So the seminar obviously should inform that. So when we get to make the decision on the 27th of August, first of all, the papers and the options are the ones that we're looking for as a result of the seminar. And secondly, we've got sufficient information to make a decision.
Grateful, Chair, I understand. Can we have it then before the recess?
Certainly with my preference. Gail, do you want to?
I just wonder, we don't have formal meetings on a Monday because we have group meetings, so perhaps scheduling it for a Monday afternoon when most groups are in anyway to maximise attendance. We had poor attendance at the education one on Tuesday, and certainly this is something that you would want to maximise attendance at.
We want to obviously check with governance in terms of the diary, but I think the clear steer is we want it before the recess, and we're quite flexible in terms of timings. I don't know if options to be circulated to members. I don't want to start having votes on it and all that sort of thing, but just to find the date, but before the recess, basically. Okay. Okay, members, can we turn to the... Sorry, Ian.
It's a very small point, and I've mentioned it a few times before, and it's the crossover, like the same between this and the Housing Committee potentially, because of the particular subject matter we've been discussing. The Local Housing Forum, Strategic Housing Forum, and it goes back to what Ronnie, it came to my mind when Ronnie spoke earlier. That was a really good forum in which to communicate directly with the housing associations, all four of them, or five or whatever there is. Well, there's loads of them, but the four in particular. But it was a really good way to communicate, and it kept whoever was interested in that type of information, kept them really up to date. So I don't know if there's any movements on that or not.
Yeah, I will indulge you, but we are really straining into housing committee business. Fortunately, John knows a wee bit about housing, so I'll let him answer the question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The Local Housing Forum was used to support the development of local housing strategy. The current LHS runs until June 16. So one of the tasks that we're now working on is preparations for the update of that. And once we work out the preparations, we'll be then timetabling housing forum meetings to look clearly on at the development of the LHS. So it will happen. In terms of the timescales, it's not going to happen before the recess, but it's going to feed into the update of the LHS, which currently runs until June of next year.
It's that particular subject size criteria. That's the only reason I brought it in, Chairman. Thanks for your indulgence, but I think even if that forum does get back up and running again, it might be worthwhile even inviting a membership from the Welfare Reform Committee. But that's, again, it's a way for here at this moment.
Okay, members, can we turn to the recommendations, page 9? Members happy to note the current position regarding the Welfare Fund and the current position regarding DHP. And we've also agreed that we'll hold the seminar prior to the summer recess. Okay. Okay, thank you. Can we turn to item number 6, which is the Universal Credit Implementation Progress Report. Lorna, can I ask if there's anything to add to the report?
Thanks, Chair. Just a bit of update about the number of claimants into Universal Credit. Currently we're tracking about 40 claims that we know of that have applied for Universal Credit, but Anecdotally, talking to the Job Centre, they reckon there's probably about 100 cases that have applied for universal credit, which is higher than they originally anticipated at this point. But obviously, they don't give us exact figures of who has applied. We can only monitor the ones that we know of through various referral routes. And we've got 40 of them that we're currently tracking to see how their application goes and what other issues there might be out of that. But happy to take any further questions.
For any questions? Ronnie?
I mean, if you take 3.1 and the statistics and the stories within that, and if you're saying there's anecdotally 100, I just wonder how that would be magnified when you look at 8 potentially have housing costs, and then there's one there that has applied to the welfare fund and crisis grant. So universal credit's not helping these people, clearly, if they're having to get additional help. And if that's multiplied, or it flows through to the potentially hundreds so far.
I think we always recognise that with universal credit, the change in the way it pays, I mean, there's 35 days waiting time between your application and actually physically getting payment. So you always knew that there was a potential for applications into, especially crisis, Scottish Welfare Fund. Universal credit does have an advanced payment mechanism. You know, we do encourage claimants to go and seek an advance payment. Obviously, that's a repayment side. It comes off their first payment. DHP, again, it's most, we know we've got probably 20 of the claims we know so far that have housing costs attached to them. We'll have 2 that we are potentially are size criteria related, so they are not automatic into DHP. We're yet to feel if there's any other DHP demand for housing costs over and above the size criteria. We haven't had any applications into that yet, but that's also, you know, going to come at some point. And back to the previous report, that will put something pressure on DHP fund going forward as well. But again, we're very closely monitoring and keeping specific figures on that as they arise.
Sorry, I should have mentioned also, it says there about a landlord, what an alternative payment scheme. And I remember some of us gave evidence to David Mundell when he visited looking at this. One of the things we said that if you give people the money and then hope they'll pay the landlord, that might not work, and there's going to be a bit of flexibility around that. Is there flexibility for landlords who have got existing arrears or are a bit worried about their tenant? And DGHP will come into that as well, I suppose. Is there an alternative so they can get the rent direct? Is that now feasible?
Yes, there is a known, what they call it, an APA, an alternative payment arrangement, and that is in place. I'm aware that DGHP has applied for, in one case for that, and that has now been received. They're getting their money paid direct, and they're also getting money off the person's personal allowance to cover arrears. The one element of that, the money that they do get to cover arrears is significantly higher than it was under the previous scheme. So again, that's something we're looking at to see, well, what impact does that then have on the tenant and their, you know, ability to manage the rest of their finances. Again, it's one of the areas that we're monitoring and having a look at and working closely with DGHP and the other RSLs on.
And that goes right back to the first question about the previous thing, the site visits of people who might have problems. You know, as I mentioned in there was 4 people, or 4, whatever. So obviously that might create more work for yourselves if you've got to go in. You know, it's like a downward spiral, isn't it?
Yes, and I think part of the support arrangements we've got in place with DWP is these welfare support officers would act as financial advisors if we get referrals from DWP for people needing support for money advice. We actually haven't had any referrals for DWP yet for budget and support, and we've not actually had any referrals either for digital support for applying online either. So all of the applicants so far, there's nothing been referred to us. However, I am aware, again, anecdotally, that RSLs are assisting their tenants quite heavily, but it's not coming via us.
Ian? Oh, it's just too much of a tenuous link. I don't think it is really, but it's trying to get to and understand the previous decisions that were made, budgetary decisions. 3.2 comes into training and it talks about the local authority, RSLs, Department of Work and Pensions. And I don't know if that's what's on today, but certainly a lot of people in here today, there's training yesterday and today as well in regards to this. But then it touches on third sector as well. And when I read that, what popped into my mind was Citizens Advice Bureau. Clearly their funding was cut from the council. And they obviously provide a service for the council. I'm wondering, has that had any effect in regards to us being able to cope with, obviously this type of policy? Because they looked at housing payments, helping people in all sorts of ways. So has that decision made at that point had any effect in regards to this? Because I would imagine they'd be under as a third sector organisation, they would be part of the organisations that get trained as well.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the core advice and assistance contract that we've got with DAGCAS, the targets were adjusted because of the reversion back to the core contract value of 860,000 per annum from April 15. And they've not reported any difficulties in making sure that those targets are met, and no difficulties in terms of increased demand. The monitoring report was held last week, and they didn't report any issues to us.
So, John, how do the members see that then? They've reported back to yourselves directly. So how do members see that? How will they be able to pick up on that? I would imagine it come through future committee reports. Just if you can lay that out to us, and it's clear for me to look out for that.
As part of the CCS Directorate performance report, there are specific PIs relating to the operation of the advice and assistance contract. So it gets reported to the CCS parent committee as part of the contract management.
It's not in the report, but this was a pilot scheme or a specific group of people to roll it out. But when, have we any idea when the whole thing, might be introduced? When everybody's under this universal credit?
It's quite a long rollout process, so at this moment it's still very targeted. It's single, uncomplicated cases. It will be extended to couples and families in April 2016. Again, it will be job seekers allowance cases only. Then they will expand into tax credits. Again, we haven't got timescales for that, but certainly ESA, employment support allowance claimants, we're looking at probably 2017, 2018. The current predictions is this is not going to be rolled out in full probably until the end of 2018, 2019, and the more pessimistic we see 2020 before we see it fully in working age claimants.
And we turn to the recommendations. Members happy to note the current position? Okay. Okay, members, I don't have any other business, so can I thank you for your attendance. Can I remind you there's also this afternoon the anti-poverty strategy development session, which obviously is an important item for members of this committee. I think that's at 2 o'clock. Hopefully see you there. Sorry. At Woodbank, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.